D23 is our favorite place to debut new concept art. But did you ever wonder what it takes to create these pieces? Let's see if we can draw the secrets out of one of Imagineering's concept artists. I don't know about this. He looks a little sketchy to me.
Okay, let's try now. Okay, perfect. Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you here. Thank you for coming. My name is Mike Quinn. I'm a concept designer at Walt Disney Imagineering. And first off, let me just say that I'm much more comfortable backstage than I am on stage, but thank you for coming. And I'm very happy today to be talking about these mashup posters. I don't know if anybody's seen them. Have you guys seen these? They're in Cars Land today. If you haven't, I'll give you a sneak peek at the making of. But first off, just a little bit about my background. I'm a concept designer. So what is a concept designer at Imagineering? We are really kind of a mixed bag of talents and backgrounds. We kind of lovingly say we are the misfits among the misfits at Imagineering. Each of us kind of are cut from a different cloth. My particular background is in media design and animation. But I also work today in visual development and art direction. I've had the good fortune to have worked across the globe on Disney parks and attractions. And most recently, probably a career highlight for me, working in Tokyo as part of the Fantasy Springs expansion at Tokyo Disney Sea. Cheers, Tokyo Disney Sea. I led the media development there on the Frozen attraction as well as Rapunzel attraction. But we're here today to talk about these Cars Land posters. You may have seen these in past seasons. There's been a few generations of them now. They tend to show up kind of seasonally, whether they be holidays or sometimes Halloween. There was a great round of these done for Pixar Fest. But traditionally, these have always kind of riffed on Pixar IP and kind of the Pixar character universe, or more general pop culture references. But with Avengers Canvas moving in to the area a few years ago, we have a tremendous opportunity here to really celebrate not only the Marvel IP, but build excitement for the forthcoming expansion to be complete. So we put together a small kind of crack team of brilliant and creative minds from not only Imagineering, but Pixar and Marvel. And we basically all got in a room and said, hey, let's do some new Pixar posters for Cars Land to celebrate kind of this collaboration with Marvel. So what did that look like? We started with kind of identifying, what are our hero candidate posters? And these were as much about kind of a popularity contest as they were about posters that really kind of represented kind of the iconic films from the MCU, both past and present, as well as those pieces that really represented or offered opportunity for a quick read and had a lot of opportunity for fun and parody. So from these initial 4, we put together a small brain trust, and we basically got into the room together and in kind of real time to start kind of what if, riffing, brainstorming, thinking about opportunity. And basically what that looks like is we had an artist, and this artist here that did these concepts, quick sketches, was Ash Brannon, who's a fellow colleague and fantastic Pixar alum and an artist and director in his own right. But he did these quick sketches as we were kind of working through these ideas. And these idea sessions were as much about nomenclature and copy as they were about the visual direction, composition, but also the fun gags and the fun stories we could tell. So sometimes things like this, Iron Man, came very quickly, made a lot of good sense, it was very simple. But then others, become a little bit more challenging. This is a great example here of, a little bit of an expanded cast of characters, but we knew from the very beginning, when it came to casting this one, that the Tucker Torpedo was just the perfect match for our hero character. And come to find out, that is a car that in the late 40s was the first of its kind, very technology-heavy, future-forward design. Only 51 of these cars were made. And what better kind of complement to play the Steve Rogers, the first American super soldier role in our Cars version, was this Tucker torpedo. So from Ash's concept sketches, I would take these and kind of further tie them down, looking at layout opportunities and composition. Not so much worried about color and detail at this point, but just getting a little bit more kind of rigid with respect to what are the vehicles that we're going to kind of inspire these characters, and how are they going to be laid out in the frame. This one posed its own challenges by virtue of the number of vehicles presented. We went through kind of methodically, one by one, looking at character opportunities, and I think Groot was really the home run in this guy. We started initially with, maybe some different types of construction vehicles, tractors, things like that, cranes, but the forklift was the home run idea. So that, especially with its fork up, elevated and extended. And then lastly, this one, possibly the most deceptively complex. Only 2 characters, but the original has so much tension and emotion and movement. When we're working in the Cars vocabulary, these cars are very rigid and stiff. So how do you kind of celebrate this kind of embrace of these 2 iconic characters, with these rigid, hard-bodied vehicles? And so even in the layout study here, it still feels it kind of lacks excitement. So we really had our work cut out for us as we kind of proceeded. Once these quick sketches were done, they were presented to our legal partners for vetting. And once they got the go-ahead, both in terms of copy and overall intent, it was go, go, go. So I'll take you down that process a little bit. From the get-go, it's very important that these posters were really as true to the originals as possible. We were not interested in kind of reinterpreting, doing a 2D kind of stylized, kind of illustrated presentation. It was really how can we take these characters and insert them into this kind of hyper-real photographic world of these theatrical posters. And that meant heavy use of texture, lighting, and atmosphere to really kind of elevate and kind of take our Cars characters to that next level. Now, thankfully, Pixar did a great job of setting a pretty high bar, right, for the Cars. They already exist in CG. They live in a world of, high fidelity, great lighting, reflective materials, lots of chromes and metals. But even then, we had opportunity to really kind of step them up even more and really present them as if they were basically photographed in the context of these kind of Marvel theatrical posters. A quick reality check for me is, as I kind of dove into this, was that these characters are more than just eyes on a windshield. It seems kind of absurd to point out, but it's painfully true as you start to play with these. And these characters, we could do a whole talk on what makes these characters work. But obviously Cars, from the Cars franchise, they have weight, they have personality, attitude, emotion, and of course they have a mouth, which I did kind of forget about, and that presented its whole unique set of challenges in kind of illustrating these from scratch. I'm very proud to say that we did not have a Cars film in production at this time, so everything that we did for these posters was custom, hand done, kind of brute force, crafting original car designs basically from nothing. So that was very exciting and a great design challenge. Moving on, part of the challenge as well here was that the Marvel characters are, they have personalities and they're recognizable, but also very much by virtue of the costumes that they wear. So how do we kind of dress up our cars without simply tacking on, human costumes slung over car bodies? So, looking at, the franchise, and historically looking at the Cars franchise, they were already doing this, right? You go back into the first film, you have Mac, and just by virtue of the styling of his cab, you get that read of that kind of iconic trucker cap, and it gives him so much personality. And then fast forward into more recent Cars films with Miss Fritter and her gang. These are probably, I took most inspiration from these guys because they take a lot of opportunity to really show how you can like instill story and character without straying really at all from a car vocabulary. You know, we got this kind of like punk rock, you know, kind of rough and tumble gang of characters, whether they be, you know, with these implied horns by virtue of the kind of tailpipe designs, or, you know, almost the idea of a mask, or these piercings, right, which are just air hoses slung through the front grills of these cars. So I took a lot of inspiration from what Cars was doing already in thinking about the characters we were assembling for our posters. So one by one, kind of went through and just basically started to chip away at, you know, creating each of these cars individually, kind of outside of the worlds of the poster. Here's a collection of some of them. We talked a little bit about Cap already, but you know, the fun part of this project was kind of matching the vehicle with the personality of the character. So, you know, you take Nick Fury, for instance, or Wolverine, you know, both kind of inspired by muscle cars. And then the paint and the color styling plays a lot into the success, really, of selling this as an idea. Along the way, too, you know, working with Pixar and Jay Ward in particular, who, by the way, if you know Jay, he knows more about cars than anyone I've ever met in my life. He was a tremendous resource and an advocate for helping us kind of convincingly stay true to the kind of Cars franchise, but also keeping me honest with respect to how we were going to get these past the lawyers when it came time to not infringing upon, you know, the trademarks of the existing automotive manufacturers. So each of these cars, although inspired by a familiar make and model, were quite a bit of customization and kind of hand tweaking to make them our own. All of the characters were based on real cars, none of which exist in the Cars universe today, so we have a whole new game that, you know, we can kind of add to that universe. The only one that we kind of completely made up was Rocket, who's kind of a combination of maybe a smart car and a golf cart, somewhere in there. But everything else was really kind of based and inspired by real world vehicles. And then, of course, the fun part, right? Once I had my lineup kind of designed and developed, it was all about integrating them into the worlds of these posters. And there's an endless amount of detail in here. It's hard to appreciate even on this screen. But if you have a chance to go see them, they're in Cars Land today through the end of the month. It's a fun bit of discovery to kind of go up and down and find all the hidden detail, including maybe a hidden Mickey or two, which are buried in each of these. But I had a lot of fun, you know, instilling detail and little links to not only Cars, but to the Marvel source material. Captain America had an opportunity with all the action in the sky to like extend our story. So it was fun to be able to instill a little bit of a nod to our planes partners with a little bit of fun in the sky. And then happy, like I was saying, any opportunity to have fun with the visual gags. You know, if you look at the eye there on Nick Fury, you know, what better opportunity to instill, you know, incorporate a cracked windshield, you know, in place of the iconic scar. Or even Black Widow, where she has this iridescent kind of auburn-colored paint job on the top with a more sleek, you know, black finish down below. As mentioned, this one was a particularly fun challenge. This is part of the biggest ensemble of any of them. Originally, we had thought, oh, it could be fun to do some sort of space station in the sky. But actually the simpler approach actually worked better with the gas station sign. And then we still managed to get a little bit of personality up there in the Milano. I mentioned Groot already as being kind of the breakthrough on this one. But you know, again, it's all about the detail and having fun with the characters. And in particular, you know, you look at Drax, monster truck makes perfect sense. But then how do we, you know, further push kind of that tie back to the original? So this idea that this kind of like, you know, rather tribal kind of custom paint that kind of evokes the markings on his character, or even the eye detail on Gamora. Again, all these little details only go in service of creating a more successful outcome. So I was very excited about how these did come together. This one, of course, posed its own set of challenges, not the least of which was the idea that we wanted to make this a little more family-friendly than the original. So the gun was immediately off the table. So we looked at any number of opportunities for the Deadpool character in terms of weaponry. But at the end of the day, we just found that we could make it as menacing as fun, but also silly without, being too literal to the original. But again, there's lots of little winks and nods to tie back to the original posters. If you look on the grills of both Wolverine and the Deadpool characters, you'll see their little insignias there represented. And then, of course, Wolverine's kind of iconic, mutton chop facial hair motif kind of reflected in the paint detail. And then just a good amount of grit and grime kind of peppered throughout to really kind of call back to the original. So with that, as I mentioned, these are on display currently in Cars Land. They are on the construction fence just behind the Cozy Cone, in between the Cozy Cone and Luigi. They'll be there through the end of the month. When that wall comes down, they will find a permanent home in Cars Land proper. And I understand there may be some extra space where they will live in the future. And to add to that, I know the MCU is not done. Doomsday is upon us, so fingers crossed there might be opportunity for more versions of these as we move down the line. So thank you very much.